Hey everyone, Tactics here, and in this video I'll be giving you guys the rundown on normal and heroic RASZAGETH, the final boss in Vault of the Incarnates. This is an insanely epic fight lasting over 10 minutes and happening across 4 separate massive platforms with 3 phases and 2 intermissions, so there's a lot to cover here, and let's just get started with the beginning of phase 1. You want to lust on pull here. As I mentioned, this fight is over 10 minutes, so that allows you to get a second bloodlust in during phase 3. For tanks in this phase, and for all other boss phases, you'll just want to keep her near the center of each platform, facing away from your raid, as she has a massive hitbox that gives your raid some space to work around the edges of the room for certain mechanics. Your swap is on Electrified Jaws here, which is a mixed physical and nature hit that leaves a dot on you for over 30 seconds, which also increases your physical damage intake by 100%. Because of this, you just want to swap at 1 stack. Just note that when you taunt back, you will have a few seconds left of this physical damage vulnerability, so just be prepared for that extra damage increase. For the rest of the raid, an important debuff to handle correctly here is Static Charge, which goes out on a few players at a time, dealing dot damage over 8 seconds, and then exploding for raid damage reduced by distance, and leaving behind a static field on the debuffed player's location. This field deals some ticking damage to anyone inside of it, as well as slows their movement by 50% and prevents some forced movement abilities, which is important for the Hurricane Wing. This happens at 100 energy, deals a bunch of nature damage, and has a heavy knockback effect over the course of 3 seconds. The easiest way to deal with this is to have your entire raid dip into those static fields when this ability goes off, preventing them from being knocked off the platform and continue to have uptime on the boss. Positioning wise, we had basically our entire raid stacked on one side of the boss and assigned one of these Static Charge debuffed players to drop their field just behind the raid, while the others ran away to reduce that incoming damage from the fall off. This allows for minimal raid movement to be safe from that Hurricane Wing ability, and for the raid to be stacked for all of this high incoming damage, making it easier to heal and use raid cooldowns like AMZ and Darkness. The other important ability in this phase is Volatile Current, which will do an 8-yard AoE around every single player in the raid and spawn a Volatile Spark mob at their location, which will just try and cast a raid-wide hit in burst. You want to try and spread out as best you can so you don't cleave your AoEs, then either use an interrupt, any form of CC, or even purge on these mobs to prevent the cast from going off. On heroic, once you stop your first spark, a second one will spawn you also need to deal with, so with your talents you do want to try and make sure you have 2 of those abilities that will work on handling these mobs. Note that AoE CC abilities like Ring of Peace, Incapacitating Roar, and many others are quite useful here, as they deal with many nearby sparks instead of just your own. The overlaps with Volatile Current and Static Charge are some of the scariest moments in this phase, so this is likely where you want to use things like Personals, Health Pots, or spread raid cooldowns like Rallying Cry and Aura Mastery. Outside of these abilities, there's also a random targeted Frontal Cone in Lightning Breath your raid just wants to avoid, as well as a Lightning Strike swirlies that constantly are shot out, and some additional raid-wide and random damage from Electric Scales that just have to be healed through. Once you get the boss to 65% HP, she'll become immune and fly up into the air, then do a massive knockback centered around the middle of this platform. At the same time, ads spawn on the 2 platforms on either side of where you were during this first phase, so you want to split your raid into 2 equal groups, then use this big knockback to have one group sent to each of the side platforms, where they'll need to kill all of the ads before the Vault integrity bar goes from 100% to 50%. During this time, RASZAGETH will alternate lightning devastation sweeps across each platform, so be aware as they can pass right over the ads sometimes, and it's lethal if you do get hit by this. In terms of the ads themselves, there's 3 surging ruiners on each platform, which each spawn additional ads once their shield is broken. On heroic difficulty, these ruiners also debuff random players with a 7-yard AoE in Surging Blast, which you just want to make sure you don't cleave anyone with. The spawned ads are Oathsworn Vanguards, which will attack faster the longer they're alive, and Stormseeker Acolytes, which will cast Stormbolt on random players, and on heroic, when below 30% HP will get 150% haste, so make sure you kick these mobs and kill them quickly. We found it best to focus down the Acolytes ASAP, and then start moving towards the next Ruiner, killing the remaining ads as you move there. Once the ads are defeated, you'll be able to run over a nearby teleporter to go to the Phase 2 platform. On this platform, you'll face RASZAGETH again, who still has the same Electrified Jaws Tank Buster, the Volatile Current AoE and ad spawns, the swirlies, and the random lightning rated damage. In addition to these, Storm Surge is the new 100 energy mechanic, which will put a massive shield on the boss, dealing increasing pulsing damage over 25 seconds or until the shield is broken. If you're unable to break the shield, you get a massive dot on your entire raid for 1.5 minutes, so it's essentially a wipe. To help you break this shield, everyone in your raid is marked with either a positive or negative charge, which will cause you to gain 200% damage and healing if you're within 5 yards of someone who has the same charge as you. In Heroic, if you're near someone with the opposite charge, you constantly explode for some nature damage around you, so very, very dangerous and something you'll want to avoid. To handle this, we pre-spread out a bit before this cast went off. Then, when the debuffs actually applied to everyone, we had all of the positive marked players stand still, while the negative marked players ran underneath the boss. Once negative players were out of the way, the positive players then moved together into small groups to ensure none of their explosions went off and that everyone was buffed. On Heroic especially, breaking these shields is likely going to be your biggest wall of this fight. For us, we had 2-minute DPS specs using their cooldowns on the first and third shield, and we used our second potion to help break down that second shield, along with 1.5-minute DPS specs. We're able to CD on every single shield. You'll also want to save your healing CDs and stacked raid cooldowns for later on in these shields, as the damage does ramp up over time here, so be aware of that. On normal difficulty, you could have your raid in the same general area and then just assign 2 stack points, one for negative and one for positive, but on Heroic, the previously mentioned strategy seemed to work way better. Another new ability in this phase is Tempest Wing, which causes RASZAGETH to shoot a ring of energy from herself that pushes players back and deals ticking damage to players within the wave. You'll want to use things like leaps and speed boosts here to get through that ring quickly, and notably you can also use a Warlock Gate to go quickly over that wave, vastly reducing your damage intake. We were able to do this on the first and fourth Tempest Wing casts in this phase, so keep that in mind. If you can't gate though, this is a good spot to commit raid cooldowns like Rally and Aura Mastery. The final new ability in this phase is Fulminating Charge, which is a massive AoE that goes out around a few players, slowing them by 75%, and will pass to the nearest player after 5 seconds with a reduced radius. If you're quick with speed boosts and abilities like Tiger's Lust and Blessing of Freedom, you're able to get these out to the edge of the platform without passing the debuff even a single time, but honestly, it's not the end of the world if someone gets clipped by this first circle, as long as they also begin running out once they have their own debuff, as the second circle has a significantly reduced radius. Make sure undebuffed players are also helping out here by running towards the center of the platform and dodging away from those circles. It's not just on the debuffed players to get out here. Once the Vault Integrity gets to 0%, the second intermission will start, spawning a Colossal Storm Fiend on the platform you have to deal with. On Heroic, you get 2 of these adds, so you want to split your group the same way you did for the first intermission, as these will enrage once one is killed, so you do want to kill them evenly. This mob occasionally will shoot out ball lightning you just need to dodge or be stunned by. Otherwise, the only thing you really need to focus on is the Storm Break ability, which causes the Storm Fiend to teleport away and leave behind a bunch of seeking Stormlands that will try and run after it. If they're able to reach the big ad, they'll heal it for 5% of its HP and give it a stacking 25% damage increase. So you just want to slow, CC these, and focus them down so they're dead before they reach that ad. At the same time, RASZAGETH still continues her strafing runs, so watch out for that lightning breath. Once you've defeated the Colossal Storm Fiend, another massive knockback comes from the center of this platform, and you want to position yourself so you get shot back to the original platform you started the fight on. In this phase, you'll need to deal with the Tempest Wing pushback and the Fulminating Charge spreading AoE from phase 2, along with that Lightning Breath random target frontal from phase 1, and of course the same lightning swirlies and raid damage that existed throughout the entire fight. The tank mechanic has changed in this final phase, now becoming Thunderous Blast, which is a big frontal line attack that deals nature damage over 2 seconds, and then deals damage to the rest of the raid based on how much damage the tank took, so it's very important you rotate through big cooldowns here as the tank for all of these casts, and that no one but the current tank is getting hit by this frontal. Again, this leaves a pretty nasty 100% physical and Thunderous Blast damage taken increased debuff on the tank here, so swap at 1 stack. To make dealing with all of these mechanics harder, a Raging Storm is closing in on you throughout this phase, limiting your space as it spreads inwards from the edge of the platform. It is possible to step out into this storm for a little bit here if you need to for some of the mechanics, such as running out with that Fulminating Charge. It deals moderate ticking damage to anyone inside. It's not an instant one-shot, but you still want to try and either pop a personal if you're going out there, and just in general minimize the time you're outside of that safe center part of the platform. In Heroic, you've got one more ability in this phase to deal with, Magnetic Charge. This is an 8-second debuff on one player, then will blast the raid for damage based on distance, then grip everyone to that player's location. You want to get this out of the group, but ideally stay inside of that safe area still, and note that players' grip often end up behind the gripping player, so don't be too close to the edge of the safe area either. Also be careful when this ability happens close to that lightning breath or thunderous blast, as it is possible to pull people through these frontals, which is definitely very, very bad. Positioning wise, the raid will want to be stacked up in this phase again, away from your tanks, which makes things like healing and gating through Tempest Wings much easier to do. As I mentioned, this fight is over 10 minutes long, so at some point in this phase, your Bloodlust will come back up, so just use it when you get it along with your third DPS potions, and hopefully bring down the Storm Eater. But there we have it, guys, my full guide to RASZAGETH on normal and heroic difficulty. Hopefully this helps you guys out, and if it does, please hit that subscribe button to help me out in turn. If you have any questions at all, maybe I missed something, maybe you want to know some more specifics about how we handle this fight, feel free to drop those comments down below and I'll do my best to answer. Also, don't forget to check out my Twitch channel at Tactics, where I stream high mythic plus keys and mythic rating from a tank's POV. Otherwise, thanks everyone so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.